Thursday, the 10th of October, and Wednesday, tremendously sad news. George Baldock dying at the age of just 31, the former Sheffield United defender, who was kind of one of the stars of the Chris Wilder era Blades. Was in Greece, he signed for Panathinaikos in the summer. Played this weekend against Olympiakos in the big game, but was found dead this week. Baldock, a Greece international, so England's clash in the Nations League with Greece this evening, Thursday, is going to be an especially poignant affair. Wow. It is the Totally Football Show on Thursday, the 10th of October, and here with us today, got Tom Williams. Hi, Tom.
Hello, James.
Charlie Eccleshare.
Hello.
Hi, Charlie. And Jack Lang.
Morning, James.
Morning to you too. Lots to talk about. By the way, many thanks to you if you came along to our live show on Tuesday at the Leicester Square Theatre. We really enjoyed seeing you all. Charlie, lovely to see you back as well from the world of tennis, which has been in the news this week.
Yes.
With the, is it AI line judges?
Yeah. The robots are rising. No more line judges at Wimbledon.
Right.
It's all done on computers and what have you.
How do you feel about that?
I'm for it. I feel bad for the line judges.
Okay.
But I think for the players and for the general experience, it's
when they came for the line judges, I said nothing because I was not a line judge.
Yeah. Sorry to the line judges, to any
Right.
line judges listening.
Is the notion that they will improve?
Yeah, most tournaments do this now.
Right.
They have electronic line calling rather than line judges. It just
Okay.
saves a layer of asking the players to kind of help officiate.
How long until we look back on the era of linesmen and sideline officials with nostalgia?
Probably not that long.
Really?
Well,
In football too?
Things move quickly, don't they? And
Yeah.
we'll long for the days of those quaint days when there were line judges on the court.
Little men and women running up and down the line. Yeah. Excellent. Jack, how have you been?
I've been fine, thank you.
Good.
Yeah,
All right. We've got a little bit of Brazil to talk about today.
a little bit, yep.
There's loads of things, actually. There's been so... Football never sleeps. It might be international break time, but football sleeps not.
Certainly does not.
So many big stories. And big stories as well in the internationals. Think you don't care, Tom? Think again. Because
I know I care.
Oh, you
Can I
do
just,
care, all right.
Just for the record.
if you listener are not feeling it about the international break, have a bang on these potential storylines. One, England, because it's England, and as mentioned, they play Greece. Can Lee Carsley continue his exceptional start to his England tenure? Two, Germany playing Netherlands. That's quite exciting, especially since it's the 8th time they've met in the last 6 years.
That's a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. There's
Tricky
also
one for the montage makers, I imagine, in both Netherlands and Germany. I guess on the one hand, you've got lots
all
of
done by
recent
AI
material.
now.
I mean, again, just leave it to the robots. Yeah.
Mauricio Pochettino, there's his first game with USA. That'll be against Jack.
Against Jack, bloody hell, are you ready? What are you doing here, mate?
I don't know, actually.
Panama.
Panama.
Against Panama. It's a
Man,
friendly. They're
a
all
plan,
friendlies.
A canal.
There's Brazil, who are currently lying 5th out of 10 in South American World Cup qualifying.
Your beloved Brazil.
Beloved Brazil.
Yep.
They're on their 3rd manager of qualifying.
Could be more soon as well.
Could be more
Things are
soon.
going, yep.
Maybe touch on that. There's France starting life without Antoine Griezmann, mainstay of French football for the last 7 years. We'll return to that topic. They're playing this
Well, that's
evening.
10 years.
10.
Technically speaking, yeah.
Okay. Well, there's San Marino trying to win 2 straight games. Steady, lads. And there's the team that's inherited the longest without a win title, Liechtenstein.
You're going to say Scotland then? No, that's cruel.
What's that?
I thought you were going to say Scotland then.
No.
That would be
Liechtenstein
unkind.
trying to hand the baton over to, not sure who the next would be on that list. But anyway, they've got a Hong Kong friendly tonight. And then they take on Gibraltar. But anyway, we'll get onto all of those top topics later. Things like Italy trying to get a 3rd straight win as they play Belgium. But of course, the most important and interesting international story is England. England-Greece. And that's where we start. England-Greece. It happens on Thursday. Listener, I'm going to be frank. You've probably seen it by the time you hear this. So not quite sure. We can take a bit of an overview. We can certainly mention that this is the first competitive meeting of these two nations since that World Cup qualifier
Yeah.
2001 at Old Trafford. No one talks about it all the time now, but...
but still, let's talk about it. I mean, what an occasion it was.
Okay, what occasion was it?
The 2001?
Yeah.
Well, it was England so nearly blowing qualification for the 2002 World Cup, having just pumped Germany, and then it looked like that might be in vain and they might be condemned to a playoff.
Was this the next game after the 5-1?
No, they played then a midweek game a few days after the
Right.
5-1. A 2-0 home win against someone like Georgia, I want to say. I'm not sure it was Georgia, but it was a kind of comfortable... Albania, I think it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Albania. It was the day Brian Moore died.
Wow.
Serves. Anyway, so they put themselves in a position where if they beat Greece, they were through. I think they needed to basically better Germany. No, they just needed to win. If Germany had won their match, then even this draw wouldn't have been enough. But thankfully, Germany drew, which meant a draw was enough. But as the minutes were ticking down, and England was somehow losing at home to Greece.
Right.
No one saw this coming, and then cometh the hour, cometh the man. David Beckham stepped up and
It was David Beckham, was it?
scored that free kick.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Because he'd had about 5 or 6 free kicks. I mean, if my recollection is that England won quite a lot of free kicks, and it was like, this is his moment, David Beckham. It's David Beckham range, and it's gone into Rosette.
It was his 8th, I think.
His eighth
free
yeah.
kick attempt
Seriously?
of the game, yeah.
Yeah.
That is
I missed that out of
extraordinary.
the documentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who would have guessed on that day that Greece would win a major tournament before England did?
Yeah, I know. Basically, the very next tournament. It is
I mean, England
crazy.
topped the group. The team that finished second, Germany, reached the World Cup
Yeah.
final the following summer. And the team that finished fourth, Greece, won the next European Championship.
Football.
And England had a couple
Football,
of quarter-final appearances. to
Also-
show for it.
But I quite enjoyed the days when England occasionally struggled to qualify for things. Not
Okay.
because, I'm Welsh and
Welsh
it's
fan.
Schadenfreude, but just like there was a bit of tension. Whereas when was the last time England sort of went into the last game desperately needing a result?
England have qualified so comfortably.
Yeah.
Well, except in the
generally.
Nations League, where they ended up relegated, of course.
Well, yeah, it's not quite the same.
And 2008. I mean, there was...
So, 2008, of course.
2007, 4 year 2008. Steve McLaren, Wally Nabrodi. But this game as well was... I'm sure Michael Cox, if he hasn't already, could do a sort of... what was Beckham doing? I mean, he was all over the place, which at the time was so amazing because he was... I mean, even watching it live was like... I've never seen anything like this. I mean,
This
he
is
was just,
outrageous.
he was just, I mean, he really was just going everywhere.
Right.
But I'm sure it's one where it's like a really
Cox would take a
ill-disciplined.
dim view of that.
I think so. I think it would be seen as quite an ill-disciplined performance in lots of ways. That England might have got the equaliser sooner if he'd stayed in his lane. So to
There
speak.
was something, I always found something very striking about Beckham's running style. I don't know whether it was the pumping of the arms. Obviously, when he
So
had all his
urgent.
hair, there was the
Yeah.
hair, but it was
Yeah.
like and I suppose because he wasn't particularly quick, maybe he felt he had to do that to cover the ground he needed to cover. But like some players kind of track back or try and close down an opposition fullback, and you think, well, they're just sort of doing their job. But there was something about the way that Beckham ran that made you think
Performative,
he's.
you think?
I mean, I wouldn't like to go that far, James, but like there's something about it that really kind of stood out.
You could see the effort, for sure.
All right.
That match also had the half-time change involved Emil Heskey going to left midfield,
Really?
which is the kind of thing you just can't imagine in today's game. That kind of, bodge job almost.
Right.
Like get Heskey out there, he would do a job out there.
You missed those days, eh?
And just-
Angelos
sorry.
Karisteas, by the way, who scored Greece's first goal in the game. Did you know this? Do you know what he's doing now? It's not driving a minicab, I can tell you that much. He is a deputy regional governor in Central Macedonia. How about that? Sorry, Tom, I interrupted.
Yeah, just going to say, on the famous Beckham free kick,
Oh, yeah.
are we all in agreement that the goalkeeper could/should have saved it?
No.
I think in the collective English psyche, the memory is of the goal kind of going right into the top left corner, but the goalkeeper didn't move.
He doesn't move, but I don't think...
I think he could.
Charlie's looking it up, right?
I think
Yeah,
in the away game, Beckham had scored a free kick and gone in the other corner,
Ha!
which I may have created a bit of doubt. But it was a very good free kick.
Yeah, Tom. This time, while Charlie looks that up, what do you
No.
think, Charlie? No?
No.
I'm sticking with my initial no.
He could at least dived. All right,
He could have
maybe
dived,
that's-
yeah, but I still don't think he's saving it.
Anything else we should say about England before we get on to games that might not have already taken place by the time people hear this?
No, I mean, I think, like Tom said, England have to they've been very, very efficient generally in these qualification campaigns, which is to their credit. I mean, it might make for some fairly boring matches, but you do still see teams, some prominent nations, having quite dramatic or tense qualification campaigns. I mean, you mentioned Brazil, and I know it's a different format, but England do just tend to be very comfortable and efficient in these qualification campaigns, which in theory should then mean they can do some experimentation towards the end.
Right.
On the sort of how do you fit them all in debate, I think ultimately Carsley or whoever gets the job, if it isn't Carsley, is going to have to pick one from Palmer, Foden and Bellingham and leave the other two on the bench. I don't think you can fit more.
You don't think you can have them... You don't think you could play
I
Palmer
think
or
what
Foden off the
you
left
have to... The problem is with the other players in that area of the pitch, I made this point during the Euros probably more than a couple of times, but you have too many players who want the ball to feet and not enough players who want to run in behind, and they're all players of that.
And then you've got a striker in Kane.
And you've got a striker in Kane who is the same. I mean, I think that the most kind of sort of cohesive iteration of the England team we've seen in recent years was the one where you had Kane as a kind of deep-lying centre-forward with Marcus Rashford and Raheem Sterling either side.
Oh, yeah.
And that was perfect because you had this sort of quarterback-style centre-forward with this phenomenal passing game, dropping deep, spinning, playing the ball in behind. Okay, when you're playing against a team that defends deep, that's not always a possibility. But I just struggle to see how you get all those quite similar players in the same team doing the kind of thing that they do in their club sides if they don't have the speedy players that they play alongside in their club sides.
Fair point. And one for Lee Carsley to wrestle with. I'm just going to move on then to other.
We've not mentioned whether or not he's going to sing the national anthem, which is obviously the main.
You're right, Tom.
The main issue.
We haven't.
And if he doesn't sing it again, should he be tried for treason? How quickly can that be organised? Just wanted to take that off.
A new political wind blowing.
Let's hope so. For his sake.
Indeed. Okay, next up. Mention the fact that football's been busy during this international break, throwing up story after story. We'll get onto one of the big ones that broke on Wednesday next. Midweek, Spain legend Andres Iniesta announced he's retiring from football. Antoine Griezmann announced he's retiring from France football. Manchester City sporting director Chiqui Bergerstein, it emerged he's going to be leaving at the end of the season. David Ornstein breaking that news. Will Pep be joining him? Question mark. And Jurgen Klopp, in contrast, getting a new job. Klopp, who left Liverpool this summer citing exhaustion, suddenly found lots of energy by joining Red Bull type thing, etc. He's become the Red Bull Group's new global head of soccer. How about that for romance? News greeted with shock and dismay around the world of football. Our shock and dismay correspondent is Rapha Honigstein, who joins us now for a very special appearance. Rapha, Klopp joining Red Bull. I'm outraged. Why am I outraged?
I don't know. Why are you outraged? I mean, a lot of people in Germany are not happy because Klopp was seen as a romantic. I think people projected all sorts of ideals about the game onto him. The fact that he coached at historic clubs and didn't go to some of the upstarts or some of the dominant teams in those leagues, but did it from sort of an underdog perspective at times. The narrative was that he's kind of fighting the good fight for, if not the little man, then at least slightly the more deserving club in some of the equations. And of course, you can't go more corporate than being the head of global soccer for Red Bull, overlooking all these clubs in a not clearly defined role as a mentor. But I think Klopp is not really interested in how he's being seen at this point. And he realizes, in my view, that the moment he changes again and walks into a club or into perhaps a German national team as a manager, people will forget this minor indiscretion as far as their sort of more lofty ideas are concerned and will just cheer him on regardless.
All right. Has it been seen, though, as a proper betrayal in Germany, particularly to Dortmund fans who have such deep-rooted loathing for RB Leipzig?
Yeah, in some quarters, I think similar language has been used. People are, I think, generally upset. I read today a piece wondering whether going to Schalke would have been worse or perhaps more palatable for Dortmund fans rather than RB Red Bull. But again, I think this is not a public role. Well, I'm going to say it's a bit of a contradiction here, because I think this is mostly a PR and advertising testimonial exercise. The media attention that's already been garnered by Red Bull is priceless, but the actual work is going to happen behind the curtains, behind the scenes. So I think that as he's not going to be seen around these clubs in a public role, public facility, then I think those reactions will dampen down. And as I said, I think the moment he does become Germany coach, perhaps after the World Cup in 2026, I think the pendulum is going to swing right back and people are going to be super happy that he's in charge.
He's going to win them over again. Were you surprised, though, so quickly after he'd left Anfield, citing exhaustion, that he took up this pretty woolly, kind of ill-defined position? Doesn't seem really to connect with the image of him, that kind of visceral, emotional sideline figure.
Yeah, but I don't think he wants that at this point. So in that sense, it's not a surprise that it's a role, but it's obviously not pressurized. You know, he's not going to be measured on how well Bragantino do next season or what the squad composition will look like. I think it is a bit of a fun job if you like travel, if you like to talk to former teammates or players or colleagues, because there's a strong relationship between him, Sandro Schwarz, former player who's the coach in New York, Marco Rose, former player under him who's the coach at Leipzig, and of course Pep Lijnders at Salzburg. So it's all going to be very matey, very nice, nice meetings, business flights, and with no pressure at all. So in that sense, it is a very cushy job, and I think it's on par with being, or not a million miles removed from being a pundit or some kind of consultant in another capacity, I should say. And surprised, yes, a little bit, because, as you said, it happened quite quickly. At the same time, the local paper in Salzburg, where Red Bull are based, had the story already a few months ago and then pulled it when I assume a lot of pressure was applied to them, and then published it again, watered down, saying there are rumors that he might come in. So this has been sort of bubbling along for the last couple of months already.
Magnificent. Rapha, so good to speak to you and see you looking so well. Best of luck with everything you're up to until we speak with you again soon.
Thank you, James.
Raphael Honigstein. Hearing him talk there, actually, I just wondered if Pep goes, whether he might take up a similar position with the City football group.
Or a rival drinks brand.
Ideally.
Monster.
Brilliant.
Monster, there we go.
Monster football group. Get it started, lads.
Speaking of famous Raffas.
Oh, yeah.
Rafa Nadal has just announced his retirement from tennis.
It's a sad day. I mean, he's going to play Davis Cup in November, and that'll be it.
And on the same morning that Richard Gasquet announced his forthcoming retirement from tennis.
Okay.
Gasquet, a man whose career was eclipsed by the likes of Nadal the whole way through, and his career has once again been eclipsed by Nadal on the very day that he announces he's bringing it to an end.
That's really sort of Salieri and Mozart.
It is, yeah.
That doesn't segue quite as nicely as the one I was going to do between Rafa Nadal and another Spaniard retiring, Iniesta.
That is a better segue, yeah.
So we'll leave Iniesta for a second or two and just mention on the subject of Red Bull, who of course took a minority stake in Leeds over the summer. They also this midweek reported to be part of a takeover for Paris FC. Paris FC, PFC, who are in line to be very much PSG's, new big rivalry.
BFFs.
Yeah, no, but potentially really exciting news for French football. Paris FC, who are currently top of Ligue 2, and Red Bull are teaming up with the Arnaud family in France, and they're going to try and turn Paris FC into a worthy opponent for Paris Saint-Germain. And there haven't been two Parisian clubs in the French top flight since the end of the 1989-90 season.
Good Lord.
So it's been a while.
Who was the other team then?
I think that was Racing Paris in one
Right.
of their kind of final iterations before
Okay.
they sunk like
Is
a
it
stone
a-
down the divisions.
Is it weird, given how much money the Arnauds have, that they're doing this with Red Bull, or is that because of their expertise? Or?
I think it's for the expertise, yeah,
Right.
because the Arnaud family have been moving into sports of late. They're heavily involved in Formula One.
right.
And again, have that link up there with Red Bull.
The Olympics, they were all over that.
Olympics as well, involved in America's Cup, so all the kind of posho sports.
Right.
And I think they probably decided that in order to move into football with a bit of credibility, they needed to associate themselves with a group that already has a football
A
presence.
heritage football group like Red Bull. I, for one, am really excited to see essentially all of football divvied up, hopefully soon, between 2 or 3 big conglomerates,
Yeah.
City and Red Bull.
And just speaking of Red Bull and
Right.
French football, again, a slightly awkward tangent, but shouldn't forget that in taking up the position that he is taking up, Jurgen Klopp is following in the footsteps of another former Liverpool manager in Gerard Houllier.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what he spent, the last years of his life doing. He was in the exact same role. So
Really?
I don't know whether that was sweet in the pills for any Liverpool fans who are disappointed by the news, but it's nonetheless a fact.
Thanks for that, Tom. I should mention, by the way, on the subject of multi-club ownership and the, let's be frank, dangers thereof, and all sorts of other aspects of football ownership, you might be interested in Nick Miller's new book, which is called Who Owns Football? ? Which is out November the 7th, and he does a big look at multi-club ownership and state fund club ownership and all that kind of thing.
I've read it and it's very good.
Oh, you've read it already,
I have,
Tom?
I have
Have you
indeed.
done that?
I was asked to provide a quote for the cover. Not sure whether
What was your quote?
this is very good. Read it.
Boom.
But I genuinely, the good thing was I wasn't lying. I meant it.
Meant it.
Did it
Not that people don't mean the things they say that get put on
Clarence
books.
Did you get
but
Clarence
just-
Seedorf?
but yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was probably the first port of call.
Right. Clarence Seedorf, who did provide a quote.
No,
somewhat
Clarence Seedorf wrote the
belatedly.
forward.
Oh, wrote the
For
forward,
the
sorry.
updated version of
Took
Do You
him
Speak
about, what,
Football?
10 years to do it?
Yeah, I'd rather
That's
not
for
get
your
into
book
the
anyway.
detail.
Do You
Yes.
Speak Football Volume 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Which is out
Who
now
did
at
the
all good
forward or
bookshops.
the jacket quotes for Vavavoom, your most recent tome?
There's one from Glenn Hoddle. There's one from Christine Carimbaud.
Right.
There is one from Simon Cooper.
Nice.
So there's
Good.
a small collection.
I believe
Jack?
they all fall into the good category of cover quotes, which is actual assessment of the content of the book. I'm a big fan of the cover quotes that actually refer to the subject of the book.
Yeah.
So it's like a book about, let's say, Andres Iniesta.
Yeah.
And one of the cover quotes is, what a player.
Yeah,
Or like, an amazing player. Like, well, yeah, obviously. But
There was a book about Postecoglou released last year that I saw. I was quoted on the back about Postecoglou saying something like, "What a start he's made at Spurs," or like he had, he's an incredibly, able manager or something. But yeah, it was about the manager.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the
a
book.
good one for this is that there was a book, I think last year, about the English cricketing revolution, Bazball.
Okay.
And all of the cover quotes like, amazing attacking cricket. God, these lads are really playing good cricket. Anything about the book?
Jack, you have a book.
No, absolutely not.
Are you writing a book?
No.
He's got a book in him. If anyone has a book in him,
It's
That
Jack.
doesn't believe in the
Jack.
concept.
If anyone's tired, it's Jack.
Charlie, book?
I've done one,
Yeah.
and who knows? There may well be a sequel
Okay.
or another book at some point.
Yours is commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Who got the... Did you get famous commentators to do the sleeve quotes for
I
that?
think they're on the sort of Amazon page.
Okay.
Your Drurys and Tylers.
All
and
right.
those characters.
Drury would probably be like the back cover and the inside cover and then...
Well,
yeah.
quite.
A toe!
how much space have we got to work with?
That was 93.
Andres
Bobby Moore
Iniesta,
died.
everybody. He has retired. At the age of 40, he'd been most recently at a club called Emirates in the United Arab Emirates. Before that, 5 years of Vissel Kobe, winning the title in Japan. Before that, a little club called Barcelona. Perhaps you've heard of them. 16 years there. Most decorated Spanish footballer ever. 9 Liga titles, 4 Champions League titles, won the Euros twice, and won and scored the winner in the World Cup final, of course, for which he remains a hero to even Real Madrid fans. They famously gave him that ovation some years later after he'd contributed a goal in one of those Barca trouncings of Real Madrid in the Clásico, but they all stood up and applauded him when he left the field anyway. I'm sure we've all had a lot of fun watching comps of his incredible side-to-side sleight of foot.
La croqueta, that's what they call it.
This
in
week.
Spain.
I mean, it's always nice when Iniesta comps pop up on your timeline. And here's a fact. Never sent off in his whole career.
Yeah, it's not all that surprising.
Yeah.
No?
He was kind of characterised by his fundamental niceness.
Yeah, that's true.
Didn't make a lot of tackles, did he?
No. Still a fact, though, isn't
But
it?
yeah, no,
Would you like to
indeed.
contribute a more relevant or in some way?
Wasn't there, there was a thing for a while. I think John Terry had more career goals than him.
Really?
But he wasn't someone who scored a lot of goals. And in a way, it kind of felt a bit beneath him because, sort of required hitting the ball hard. And I think of it, obviously, there's the famous World Cup final goal, but you don't really think of him as a goal scorer particularly. He was more dainty and creative.
Right.
He was a bit of a throwback in that respect. He was like a facilitator, a dribbler, a space finder. The kind of person who, if you were to, if you compare him to other players of his era in terms of stats, he might not compare all that favourably, but if you watched him, his influence was unmistakable. And I think in terms of what he represented in particular, you think about the era during which he first emerged, the mid-noughties, when football just seemed to be getting faster and more physical, and players were getting bigger and stronger, and there was the whole Benitez Mourinho era. And that seemed to be the way that it was going. And I think Iniesta, perhaps more than any other player, symbolised the manner in which the tiki-taka revolution kind of completely changed the way that footballers looked. And I think all the comparable players who came afterwards, obviously him and Xavi, came through at the same time, and players like David Silva, Juan Mata, that sort of flood of dinky Spanish technicians who suddenly just spread all through European football. Your Santi Cazorlas. Iniesta's, really in the vanguard of that.
Magnificent. How would you characterise Griezmann's legacy? He's not retired from football per se, but just from France football. And also, what about the timing of this on the eve of France's game with Israel, just kind of suddenly out of the blue?
Yeah, very surprising. Very surprising. Hadn't been trailed at all. Nobody saw it coming. And it appears to have been in response to the fact that he is no longer a first-choice pick for Didier Deschamps, which he had been throughout the entirety of his France career. You sort of go back to 2014 when he first comes into the team. And throughout the team's evolution under Deschamps, under that period, and different personnel and different playing systems, he has always found a place for Griezmann. And I think that he, more than any other player, kind of summed up the strengths of the team that won the 2018 World Cup, first and foremost because he's an exceptional footballer, but also the tactical canniness, the slightly cynical edge to his football, which I think Diego Simeone probably had a little bit to do with, but that was kind of that was the way that France won that tournament, by kind of just being good enough to get through all the games that they got through, and then. Right up until the European Championship, he was still first choice, and then found himself on the bench, wasn't getting a look in, was overlooked for the captaincy, notably when it went to Kylian Mbappe, and has basically announced that if he's not going to be a central figure, he'd rather not be involved at all. And it did come as a real surprise, because this 2018 generation has vanished quite quickly. Griezmann announcing his international retirement, that comes on the back of Hugo Lloris, Rapha Varane, Olivier Giroud, all these other players. Paul Pogba's disappeared for different reasons, and suddenly the squad is almost completely bereft of the players from that generation.
This squad for the Two Nations League fixtures is the first one since 2018 that won't feature any of that World Cup winning side.
No, there are two.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, so Ousmane Dembele and Alphonse Areola are in the squad, but weren't first choice picks in 2018. And all of a sudden you look at this France squad, and Dembele is the most capped player with 51 caps.
Wow.
Mbappe is not involved this time around, fairly controversially, because Real Madrid announced he had an injury. He made his comeback against Lille in the Champions League, came on as a substitute. He was then left out of the France squad. Deschamps explaining that he needed time to recover from this injury. And then Saturday, in their most recent league game against Villarreal, he started, played 70 minutes. So he obviously is fit, but has decided he's not going to be involved in this get-together. And consequently...
It's not like he's the captain or anything.
Well, yeah, and he's the captain as well. And there is a bit of a debate in France about his attachment to the national team, his commitment to the national team, how that might affect his popularity. He was booed when Real Madrid played at Lille in the Champions League, which is kind of surprising given how popular he was in the immediate aftermath of the 2022 World Cup final, when he was sort of this close to delivering France the trophy again. So there is a bit of, a bit of debate about the damage he might be doing to his standing within the French game and his popularity in the eyes of French football fans by not showing up for this get-together. And it means that for the game against Israel, at least, it's Aurélien Chouameni who is going to be stand-in captain, vice captain, because it would have been N'Golo Conte, but he is also missing.
Always annoys me a bit when players retire from international football early, and I just think it's just a legacy thing. I think, and future generations, when they look at Griezmann's made 140-ish France appearances, it's really good, fine, but that number will stay the same. There won't be an asterisk next to it saying, he could have actually done more. It just stands at that. I remember thinking the same when Philipp Lahm retired at 31 or something from Germany duty. He could have played for 4 or 5 more years. And I almost, it's not a patriotism thing at all. I just think a player owes it to the record books. Just
owes it to the game.
Make them turf you out of there. Just cling on by your fingertips,
rage against the
2-3 minute appearances against Latvia in friendlies, just really bolster those stats. If you're a player of this quality, get to 170.
But also Griezmann is only 8 caps off the France record, and he kind of deserves to be their leading appearance maker. He already holds this extraordinary record of consecutive appearances. He played something like 90 plus games in a row for France. 84, there you go, thanks James.
90 minus.
And I think the fact that he was kind of on the cusp of, these milestones suggests that he obviously was pretty cheesed off about the fact that, he's kind of been eased out of the first team picture.
I was wondering, is the prospect of not spending one weekend a month with Didier Deschamps the overriding factor of this?
No, but they were great pals. And Deschamps, when Griezmann announced his decision, put out, a very sort of like long and seemingly quite heartfelt statement. And he said, I know everyone has always accused him of being my chouchou, like, my pet, like my favourite.
Oh, really?
And I'm not afraid to say, he was. He was my go-to guy. But there was...
he's hanging up his shoes.
There was a feature on the Telefoot programme on TF1 over the weekend about Griezmann's farewell to international football, and they spoke to some of his former teammates and like close friends, people like Giroud and Lloris, and I think Giroud said that he had taken the captaincy thing quite badly.
Yeah,
he thought he was sort of first in line. He had the seniority. Deschamps went with Mbappe, and I think that's probably played a role in his decision as well.
This is becoming quite an in-depth chat about the French national team, but why do you think Deschamps went with Mbappe? Is it as egregious a call as it sounds?
I think part of it is a recognition that Mbappe still represents the team's future in a way that Griezmann doesn't. And also, Mbappe is, someone who sort of needs careful managing and has a lot of authority in the changing room. And, France have done this in the past. Platini was captain quite young. Zinedine Zidane ended up being captain towards the end of his career. It kind of feels a logical thing. But in terms of their roles in the team, I think Griezmann would have made a lot more sense when you look at how important he is to the way that France play. I mean, he's been the heartbeat of this France team for 10 years, whereas Mbappe, as great as he is the guy who kind of hangs around waiting for the ball and then, scores a lot of goals.
I do think, by the way, with Mbappe... I mean, obviously, it shouldn't have to be the players have to take matters into their own hands, but everyone talks about how crazy overworked these players are. I do wish it was sort of more acceptable for players sometimes to just be like, I'm not going to play this international break. It doesn't.
Talk to your friend Jack.
Well,
over
but
there.
that's slightly. Yeah, I know, but that's slightly different. I'm not saying they should retire.
Yeah, but they're
and
still
they
gonna,
might
still gonna
but-
miss fixtures.
Yeah, but they
No,
might be
I
able to
think-
then last longer
Yeah,
and play
complementary.
more games
Well, that's-
overall.
That's
And
often
Because
the
it's
case
like there's
for
such
fixtures.
this sort of like trees. You can't do that. You're laying down your country, but it's like they're gonna be fine. You know, say with England now, like they've got so many good players. If one player who's just like, you know what, I played all through the Euros. I'm
Right.
absolutely exhausted.
Do they not do
I'd
that
really
anyway?
benefit
Just
from
say,
Greece.
"I've got
They
the
say
bad
they've got an
back."
injury. I know, but
Yeah.
why have to go through that rigmarole? Just
Yeah.
be honest about it.
But I mean,
Very
that's what's
fancy.
unusual about the Mbappe thing. He could
Right.
very easily have kind of invented an injury,
Right.
You know,
But I guess
a,
then
new, a new injury.
yeah.
He's going to need a couple of weeks rest, and then he'll be fine. And it happens so often that people wouldn't really have,
Yeah,
but
I
noticed.
Yeah, I just think you should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be sort of your sort of sense of national pride shouldn't be questioned necessarily. Just be like, I'm exhausted. I've played all through the summer. Would really benefit from a couple of weeks off. Obviously, then everyone would go mad because it's like, but what about our club's player? He should be the one doing that, and it all spirals. But
It does, doesn't it? It does. Other internationals, we'll fly through these because we've got a bit of Man City chat to come. Italy play Belgium. That's Thursday night, tonight as we record. Belgium have not won a competitive game against Italy since May 1972. Wow. Yeah, wow. Anyway, Belgium without one or two players like KDB and big Romelu Lukaku. Italy going with the really young side. Anyway, that game's probably happened by the time you hear this, listener. Iceland, Wales, Tom. That's Friday, 7:45. With an eclectic mix called up by Craig Bellamy, who's done all right. Is that fair so far?
Yeah, I mean, the first half an hour of the 0-0 draw against Turkey is about as excited as I've felt watching a football match
Yeah.
in some time.
Okay. What was happening to you?
Well, basically,
Where did you watch it?
I watched it at home on my sofa.
Right.
But he'd sort of given the team this new identity, hyper aggressive without the ball, high pressing, and then these extremely sort of risky passing combinations out from the back. And Wales just attacked in an absolute blur. Should have won it comfortably, even after Turkey got reduced to 10 men and ended up not managing to score, drew 0-0. Then won away against Montenegro in the second game in absolutely horrendous weather conditions. And I think he's kind of done what people hoped he would, which is breathe new life into the squads, give the team a new kind of dynamic. And, the Turkey game in particular, okay, Wales didn't win, but this is a Turkey team who'd reached the quarterfinals at Euro 2024 and I think impressed, pretty much all of us. Wales absolutely played them off the park with the same players, who had been so disappointing a few months previously under Robert Page. So that was all very exciting.
I've got a question here for you from the 94th minute who says, a question for Tom. What are your thoughts on the return of Joe Allen to the Wales team?
Yeah, I mean, fantastic news. So he announced his international retirement in February 2023.
Off Jack's Christmas card list at that point, but then redemption.
Absolute
right, yeah.
scum in Jack's eyes. So he's 34 these days. He's at Swansea. He hasn't started a league game this season. I think he's made 5 substitute appearances. So he's no longer the Joe Allen of yesteryear.
Right.
I think he's probably, Bellamy said that it wasn't strictly to do with this, but he's basically replacing Ethan Ampadu, the Leeds midfielder, who's been ruled out for a little while.
Okay.
But I think it's another way of sort of maintaining a continuity with that Euro 2016 team. Aaron Ramsey, who played very well against Turkey in that first game, he's also injured. And so apart from Ben Davies, there aren't any other survivors from Euro 2016, and Joe Allen, of course, is. And so I think Bellamy feels he can kind of help Wales to play the kind of football, this very kind of possession-focused football that Bellamy wants to play, and also he's a wise old head in amongst a very sort of callow group of players.
Nice.
So yeah, a feel-good story.
That's great. I went to Hampden Park on Wednesday to speak to Shay Adams and Billy Gilmour about life in Italy. Yeah. And it was interesting.
Enjoying
atmosphere
it?
there. Are they? Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they are. They're loving it. I think it's a little bit lonely sometimes, particularly for Shay in Turin, because he's not got, say, Scott McTominay or a lot of people who speak English like Conte, if you want to speak to Conte and Romelu Lukaku. But he said lots of the players do speak English, but it did sound like, when he's not training, there's not a huge amount going on. But he's doing brilliantly, Shadows. I don't think many of us saw him suddenly moving to Serie A, and I certainly didn't see him moving to Serie A and then getting off to the start that he did. 4 goals, 2 assists so far in 7 matches. He was top of the table before. Billy Gilmour is now top of the table with Napoli. And Scott's players, when you put them together in a Scottish national team, doesn't work so well so far. But they are very much flavour du mois. Can you say that? No, flavour du jour.
You say it in Italian, maybe?
I'm not sure there's the equivalent phrase. It would be more appropriate, you're right. Anyway, best of luck, Scotland. They're in Croatia on Saturday with a very young team. Got a lot of injuries, Scotland. And they've been in both games so far against Poland and Portugal, only to be undone by heartbreaking late goals. Perhaps this will be the match.
I mean, it is the double-edged sword of the Nations League that when a team of, sort of Scotland's level gets promoted, and this happened to Wales, you're playing against lots of very good teams, and it is hard to... it's a lot harder to win matches inevitably.
It's the old promotion,
that's how it,
bittersweet
how it works.
thing, yeah. Anyway, loads of other things to look forward to. Mentioned Germany against Netherlands. That's taking place on Monday. Also, on Thursday night, Gibraltar-San Marino, which is huge. Absolutely huge. So Liechtenstein are the new team with the longest winless streak, 41 games, 10 years. And they play Hong Kong on Thursday. That's a friendly, though. But they will be playing Gibraltar on Sunday. Could offer them the opportunity to break that run, although Gibraltar looking better and better thanks to the Nation League experience. But Liechtenstein will be playing San Marino, who handed them the baton of shame only last month, and they'll be playing them in November. So that'll be a huge match. Huge.
Still the worst team in the world, San Marino, officially.
Yeah, officially the worst team in the world.
But closing that gap. Watch out. Who the hell is that even?
What?
Anguilla,
yeah.
Got them in their
Who
sights.
also won a game the same week that San Marino did. If you listen to previous international editions of the Totally Football Show, listener, you know all of this. So let's get on to some new stuff. After this, we'll dial up Matt Slater to find out what on earth with Man City's APT ruling. Listener, we're joined now by the Athletics' Matt Slater. Why? Because Man City, who took the Premier League to independent arbitration back in June. And we got the verdict this week. A verdict that was a win for Man City, but also a win for the Premier League. Or was it a win for football? Who was it a win for? It's a football podcast. We need someone to be the winners. Matt Slater, who came out on top in this one?
The lawyers.
I see. Elaborate,
Billable
please.
hours. Oh, it's an amazing time to be a sports lawyer. Absolutely. This is the greatest ever era for sports law. Who won? I spent 3 or 4 days kind of reading that bloody document again and again and again and talking to sports lawyers. It is their game, I'm afraid. I'm sort of the view it's a draw.
Okay.
I know it's a really frustrating result. But I completely understand why Man City feel they won, and I also have heard the Premier League's views as to why they won.
Why was the case important, and why was the verdict important, Matt?
Well, the case is incredibly important for a few reasons. One, this is significant. The shareholders of the Premier League are not supposed to take the league to arbitration, right? That's significant. This is war, lawfare. This is bad. We knew it was bad already, but this is just further proof just how bad it is. It's 175 pages worth bad. The result is significant, and this is where you might lean to the Man City side, because under competition law, the Premier League's rulebook has now been found to be unlawful. And as one of Man City's favourite columnists this week put it, unlawful, blah, 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 blah. Right? That's there. That's there on page 164. They haven't made that up. Now, if you read the previous 163 pages, you do get a different view, right? That this was a sort of shotgun approach, perfectly legitimate, by the way, particularly in competition law. You come at it with absolutely everything, hoping that maybe, one or two darts sticks, and there you go. You only need one. They got 7, actually. They got 3 competition law rulings in their favour, 4 public law procedural fairness type rulings. I don't want to get too complicated on this.
So essentially, a lot of it comes down to the rules on sponsorship deals that you do with entities that are owned by the people who own your club, sort of in-house sponsorship. And the big win for Man City was the fact that they argued, correct me if I'm wrong, that loans, interest-free loans made by the people who own your club as a means of financing the club and its debt should be counted in the same way, which I think is probably fair.
Absolutely fair. I mean, that's their biggest win, and it's big for a few reasons. One, because it basically it's the win they needed to have the whole associated party transaction rulebook effectively thrown out. You only need, as I said, one, right? So under competition law, the fact that the Premier League were addressing, if you like, the potential hidden subsidy of an inflated sponsorship deal from a friendly company, but we're not addressing the potential, and I would say very obvious, subsidy of a cozy loan, a low interest, no interest, pay me back never loan. That's a subsidy too. The Premier League, I think, were aware that it was potentially an issue. They had taken some legal advice. They put it to the clubs, and the clubs have said, no, don't worry about it, including Man City, by the way. We'll just carry on as regardless, nearly always because there's a big tax efficiency for this. And look, the implications of this are potentially huge, way beyond the Premier League. The English Football League is full of teams that are basically funded by these very soft loans. So we shall have to see where this goes. But that, I think, was a perfectly legitimate argument to make. And Man City won it, absolutely won it. There is no equivocation about that. Now, how do you fix the rule book? The Premier League would tell you it's okay because the other stuff was actually quite minor. And I think many lawyers I've spoken to would agree with that. Theoretically, they can fix the rule book pretty fast. The shareholder loan bit, I think, is really complicated because it opens up, as I said, this can of worms for, right, so do we have to go back retrospectively and look at those £450 million worth of Everton loans, those Leicester loans, those Bournemouth loans, etc., etc., etc. Some of the clubs will go, not a problem. We put it as a soft loan because of, as I said, nearly always tax. We'll just do it as equity. Okay, fine. But should we then retrospectively at least add some cost to your PSR? You see where I'm going with this? By knocking down the Premier League's APT rules, Man City got a big win. And that's a big problem for the Premier League. Can the Premier League fix it? Yes, they can. But politically, they're going to have a real issue, I think.
Okay. Matt, you mentioned the fact that it is pretty extraordinary to see a constituent member of a league taking that same league to court. How significant and how potentially damaging in the future was it the fact that a number of other clubs sided with them in this dispute and gave evidence in their favour?
Well, this is, I think, that political thing I was just, kind of getting at, that we've got to the point where, again, all right, if I'm going to massively simplify it, this is the row that's raging on X, right? Red versus blue, right? You've got the established clubs. Oh, this is an old story, isn't it? It was the cartel. The drawbridge came up when they saw Chelsea coming along. Oh my God! And then Man City come along. Oh, it's even worse, right? So you have your Man Uniteds, your Arsenals, etc., going right. We're the big boys. Oh no! Here's some more big boys with sovereign wealth behind them. This is the disaster. And don't forget, of course, this current bout of tension and anger really started because Newcastle came along, right? Potentially joining the Blue Cartel. There's almost no doubt about that. But we had 8 years of PSR, remember that, where associated party transactions weren't massively addressed, to be honest. They were there in the rules, but it wasn't a big deal. Suddenly you get October 2021, Newcastle get bought, and the other clubs are like, oh my word, not another Man City. We've got to do something about these potential dodgy, not my word, well, it is my word, sponsorship deals. And then we get these new rules and then we get these new facts. Now, this blue-red thing is really interesting because, as you say, Chelsea, multi-club group, disruptors, Everton gave evidence, right? They backed Man City. On the other side, you had pretty much everybody else, either appearing in the arbitration or just sending written submissions. This is a problem. No one could sort of pretend, even if I was willing to sort of go along with the Premier League view that this is pretty fixable. And look, that's fine. I've read it myself, and lawyers have said, yeah, you can fix that, you can fix that, you can fix that, you can fix that. They've still got to walk into a room and say, 2/3 of you have got to back these new rules. I need 14 votes. And I already know that pretty much 4 or 5 of you, hate's a strong word, but you're very opposed to what we're trying to do here.
Right.
This is tough.
But they can still push it through with the tyranny of the majority.
Well, it was a great line. They actually lost that argument. That was one of the arguments Man City lost. There is no tyranny of the majority. There was no inherent bias against them or other golf clubs. The framework, if you like, the fundamentals of PSR, FFP, whatever you want to call it, did actually survive this. So that is why the Premier League, can sort of feel comfort from this. I wouldn't get too comfortable, though, because you still have this political problem. You still have this open now, bitter dispute with Man City, which, by the way, you've got this other case rumbling on in the background.
Is there another case?
There's another case, James.
There is another case, okay.
The 115 case, that's the biggie, right? This is just like a skirmish, to be honest. And if Man City hoped to get a result from this one that would help them in that one, they haven't got that, to be fair.
Right.
That was a fail. That was a win, if you like, for the Premier League. Man City will be comfortable enough with, I think, what they got from this one. But the Premier League's problems don't go away. We're a little bit in limbo at the moment. What are the? Do we have APT rules at the moment, or ATP, or whatever, whichever way around you want to do it? Do we have rules on this? Premier League are sort of saying, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry, we're going to have a vote and we'll get it all sorted. It's not my place, but if I was a club that had a really, really interesting sponsorship deal to put through that might be a little bit on the generous side, I'd whack it in right now,
right?
Because there's disarray. You might get a very, very generous fair market value assessment.
Excellent. Leicester are probably working on that even as we speak. All right. Thank you so much, Matt Slater, for joining us from outside. Where are you outside, Matt?
I am in a shared hot desk office space.
Oh, nice.
We don't do adverts, but it's in Stockport, and it's the first time I've ever been here. It's an old bank, and it's absolutely lovely.
All right. What's the name, Matt?
What's the name of this place? Profolk.
Well, that sounds nice. If you're in Stockport and you have some workplace needs, that's an option for you. Matt, thank you so much, and look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Anytime.
I feel that ideally the Premier League would have wanted the number of pages to be 115, not 184.
That would have been good, yeah.
That would have been
It's like, speaking to Matt, is just, I look at him and just think, like, that's professionalism.
It is.
He actually knows stuff inside
Although,
out. Makes me
does
feel
he?
so hamdram.
Does he? Does he? In the sense that none of us have read it. He could have said anything.
It's true.
Yeah.
You might be making all that up.
Yeah.
That's just
No, Matt
That'd
is
be some
actually...
Kaiser Soze.
He's
He
so-
doesn't
Patrick,
actually read
Hanrahan.
I've read it.
35,000.
Sorry, it's Peter Hanrahan.
3,500.
Peter Hanrahan.
Peter
Oh,
Hanrahan. Possibly, if we'd asked him to hold up his notes, there would have been a large spider.
A spider.
Yeah.
And how's the spider's web going to get you out of your numerical mess? I know.
Jack,
James.
what's cooking in the CONMEBOL pot?
Brazil are cooking at
Yes.
the moment, yeah.
So they're fifth right now.
Currently fifth, yeah. That's 8 points off the top.
Okay.
Just to remind everyone that there are now 6 automatic slots and a intercontinental playoff.
So you'd have
call
to
it
finish
6.5.
eighth really to miss out.
You'd have to finish 8th.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many points are they off eighth?
They're currently only 1 point above 8th.
But they've got the two easiest fixtures.
They've got
is
the
that
two
right?
worst teams coming up, play Chile and then Peru, who are both absolutely awful.
Are they?
So that is good news. And
Will they
weirdly-
win those games, do you think, Jack?
I mean, on current form, you wouldn't be confident about it, no. I would, if I had to guess, maybe they would win one and draw one, something like that. So in the last international break, they scraped a really miserable draw against Ecuador in a poor game, and then were beaten by Paraguay, and that helped Paraguay kind of claw their way back up. But weirdly, Brazil still, thanks to that dodgy win, went up in the table. So things are comparatively better than they were a few weeks ago, but the mood is extremely negative.
Right.
this is a quite a bad team, and they've had loads of players pulling out. So Vinicius Junior is out,
Right.
Alisson is out,
Right.
Militão is out, and so I mean Dorival Junior, the coach, is still kind of scrapping around for ideas, and it looks like this time Brazil are going to be led up front by Igor Jesus, who plays for Botafogo.
Okay.
If you haven't heard of him, that's pretty excusable. He was kind of playing in the Emirates, along with Iniesta, I imagine, for a little while.
Right.
Not exactly a big...
Igor Jesus.
Igor Jesus, yeah. It feels like a kind of combination of 4 different players, doesn't it?
Right.
And another debut at left back, a guy called Abner, who plays for Lyon now. So this is where we're at. We're at a place where Brazil are now picking players that a lot of people wouldn't have heard of. Just the cupboard's pretty bare. They need a bit of physicality, a specialist up front. They've been kind of faffing about a bit. Endrick hasn't made the position his own yet, and there seems to be some doubt whether he's ready to be starting.
I mean, Lucas Moura played in that last
Lucas
game, didn't he?
Moura
I mean,
was in the
that's
last squad.
Pretty incredible.
What? Richarlison?
Charles is
He's
still
injured.
injured. I mean, if he was fit, I think he would walk into this team at the moment, regardless of form, just because that's how funny things have got.
So is there a big debate in Brazil about why the well has run dry for them, talent-wise?
So right at this specific moment, no. I think there's a kind of crisis-y, let's get this sorted, and then we'll have the big existential question afterwards. I think it's more to do with coaching at the moment. So,
right.
Dorival Junior got this job through having been a kind of he'd earned his opportunity type manager in the domestic scene, but I don't think anyone really regarded him as an elite manager. Obviously, he had the Ancelotti situation I've spoken about at length before, but the kind of where's all the talent gone? I think there are 2 schools of thought. One is that you've got Vinicius Junior, he's one of the best players in the world. You've got Militão, Rodrigo playing at top Champions League clubs, Marquinhos another one. You've got Alisson. So there is a kind of a core of players who you would still say is pretty good. And then a debate that's been happening in recent times is in the midfield. So you've got all these players that have been regular Premier League midfielders. So Paquetá, Guimarães, João Gomes, André now, who has moved to Wolves. You had Douglas Luiz before, who was at Aston Villa. And this kind of, that groove of players is quite divisive because you've got some people saying, look, they're playing week in, week out in the best league in the world. These are really good players. And you've got other people saying, but they're not playing for the top clubs. They're playing for like mid-table clubs. So that's a debate that's ongoing. And I think, perhaps if and when, I don't think they will fail to qualify for the World Cup. I think it's too generous a qualification group. But maybe when they qualify, maybe that will be the moment for a bit of reflection on the macro picture, like, talent progression, all this stuff. Because, it's not a great squad.
Okay, Rafinha's in there?
Rafinha's in that. That is actually one, I think, bright spark for Brazil.
Okay.
He's been in great form for Barcelona. And I think it looks like against Chile, he's going to play in a more central role, number 10. Which I think is probably a good thing for Brazil. Previously, Dorival was playing with one very deep central midfield and then kind of 2. He was playing with like Paquetá and João Gomes just in front of Bruno Guimarães, and that really wasn't working very well. So at least now I think Rafinha is going to be a number 10, which should at least give them a little bit more creativity in those areas with Paquetá deeper. But of course, Paquetá is a whole different debate because you've a lot of stuff raging in the background with Lucas Paquetá.
Okay, who has that outstanding spot fixing case?
Spot fixing investigation, which is also now involving another guy who is in the squad, Luis Henrique, who plays for Botafogo now.
Right. When is there any idea, time frame on when we're going to hear a verdict on that? So
the most recent reports are that the Paquetá camp expects to hear in around March, I think.
March of next year.
Yeah.
And there was some talk that it could be a kind of career-ending ban.
I think the legal consensus is that if he's found guilty, he's going to be in big trouble.
Right.
it could be curtains for him.
But as you were saying, that there's a big debate in Brazil about the fact that they're still using him in the meantime.
Well, there isn't a debate,
Oh.
which is in the CBF, which is quite interesting. The federation have kind of stood by him. I wrote about this a few days ago on The Athletic. I mean, I personally think he shouldn't be in the squad at this stage. Same for Luis Enrique.
Even though he's not been found guilty yet.
Yeah, because I think I understand West Ham continuing to play him, because that is, you're there in an area of employment law, and if they remove him, he can, I don't know, potentially have a claim against them for whatever it is stopping him carrying out his job. But with Brazil, it's a representative form of the game. Then the CBF aren't his employers,
Right.
and I think if, judging by the seriousness of the case, and it is a pretty serious case.
Yeah, he's just to briefly put a parenthesis in. It's
Right.
not just that he's gambled. The accusation is that he has deliberately committed acts which would then see him win bets that he'd placed.
Influencing games
Right.
with a view to influencing the betting markets on them. And the new revelations 2-3 weeks ago were that Luis Enrique, who at the time played for Betis, there was a spike in betting, not just on Paquetá's yellow cards, but also on Paquetá and Luis Enrique being booked on the same weekend. And now the Brazilian media has reported that the two relatives of Paquetá made payments to this Luis Enrique. And these guys admit that those payments were made, but they say, they were relating to a personal loan, which, yeah, I mean, you may or may not accept that explanation, but it certainly looks pretty dodgy. And you've now got Paquetá, who is under this very serious investigation. He's always insisted on his innocence. We should say that. And you've got another guy, and there have been payments between, Paquetá's family and this guy about them both getting yellow cards on the same weekend. They did get yellow card on the same weekend. There was a spike in betting numbers on those events on that weekend. I mean, to me,
Well,
far be it for me to use
Right.
advertising speak, but the optics are pretty bad, I would suggest.
yeah.
Is it right, Jack, that gambling's only been legal in Brazil for not very long, and that's
It's
part
quite
of the
similar
issue?
to the States. Like it's quite a new thing. Brazilian gambling is a whole different story. There's kind of been big illegal gambling networks and so on. But yeah, it's quite a new thing, and this isn't the only issue that's come up. I think before the Paquetá case came out, there was a kind of a sting operation in which I think 8 or 9 Brazilian players playing all over the world were kind of investigated for similar things, spot fixing. And so, yeah, I think perhaps there's a feeling that it's not as tightly regulated, or, you may suggest that people aren't as aware of the rules in a newly kind of founded betting environment. But I mean, Paquetá was playing in England. I'm sure he was well aware of the rules.
Wow. Brazil struggling then. Who's doing really well in CONMEBOL qualifying?
I mean, Argentina are top. Colombia are unbeaten second.
And Colombia go to Bolivia.
Colombia at altitude in Bolivia.
How
yeah.
much altitude, Jack?
Loads of it. I can't-
4,000
to go.
metres.
Tough place to-
4,000 metres?
Yeah. I mean, they've now got a new home in El Alto. The heights. Well, yeah, that is pretty high. And
4,000
I mean,
metres.
Bolivia.
Where were they before? How much? It was about 3,000?
They were in La Paz. I can't remember the difference, but it's a few hundred more.
Oh, is it?
now,
Okay.
Yeah. Which, when you're at those altitudes, does make a difference to the lungs. But Bolivia, this is the interesting thing about the kind of 6th, 7th, 8th places. I think Brazil will get out of there. But you've got Venezuela and Bolivia. Venezuela, who have never qualified for a World Cup, really would be historic for them. And even Bolivia haven't played in one since, I think, 94. Those two teams have been the whipping boys for decades and decades. And it's feasible they could both make the next World Cup, which would be a really
At Brazil's expense.
incredible. Probably not at Brazil's expense.
But I mean, it's a story.
that would be, a staggering turn of events.
Wow.
Great leveler, isn't it? Altitude.
Yeah. Ironically, I guess
it's
that's
the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My word. All right. Well, so that game, Colombia away to Bolivia, is.
I think Thursday night, Friday, early
Oh,
hours.
right. Okay. So which is when Brazil are playing as well, and Argentina away to Venezuela Yeah, interesting. So if you're up late, maybe can't sleep after the raw drama of listening to this podcast, listener, have a look, because it may be out there on TV or on the net somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll
I think
find
there
it.
may be a Premier Sports type
Yeah.
arrangement.
All
available.
right. Well, it's going to be a packed weekend of international action. And you'll be excited as well to hear that we'll be back on Monday next week with the next Totally Football show, reviewing everything, including England's Finland game on Sunday night. So, yeah, make sure you join us for that, please. For now, many thanks to Jack, Tom, Charlie, special guest producer Jay, because producer Charlie wasn't well. Get well soon, producer Charlie, and Liam in the booth. And above all, you, listener, I hope you're well. And I hope you'll be joining us again soon. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around, and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.